Hi all, let's look at the last round game of Magnus Carlsen. So if he won this, he'll be getting 50%, which is what he was hoping for. He was playing against his fellow Norwegian countryman and good friend, lifetime friend, Jon Ludvig Hammer, where we've seen actually a very early encounter on the channel, if you look for Hammer against Carlsen on this channel, where Carlsen had a fantastic queen sacrifice. That was when he was very young. They were both much younger. So they've been rivals many, many years and very, very good friends. And Hammer's been second for the World Chess Championships. Okay, so he must know Magnus Carlsen's opening style more than anyone else, actually. And vice versa. They know each other quite well. So let's see what happened. Jon Ludvig Hammer played d4. By the way, I've seen him firsthand at the London Chess Classic FIDE Open. He won it, I think, a couple of times. I remember one extremely crushingly. I was really impressed the way he destroyed a lot of the British grandmasters. It was very, very impressive. He really did hammer them. So his name is fitting sometimes. d5 from Magnus. c4. e6. No surprises so far. Except here, the classical response here for black. Knight f6. c6. These are all popular. Magnus played a bit rarer. Only 154 games, a6. So this is a bit strange now. Now even stranger, bishop g5, usually bishop e7 in this position, but it's already a bit of a rare position. For example, games like this, it seems as though, white's okay here, but black's not doing too terribly either. But Magnus played f6. And I don't know, this looks a bit odd. It really is off the rails now, f6. Maybe it's an expression Magnus is fed up, to be honest. I can't help feeling this isn't a good move. And I think Topolov actually indicated Magnus didn't play a good opening in this game. It just in principle, a move like this, it's just a little surprising. It weakens the diagonal a bit. It means that these pawns are a bit more fragile, in particular e6. If white can ever put pressure on that diagonal. Just a very, very odd move to make. Just have a look at this position again. So but bishop e7 is the main move, knight f6, and we could transpose into something pretty standard. Say knight f6, we can transpose surely. This position starts to be looking sort of standard again, but with a6 it's a little bit weird. But apparently there's 34 games here. So I don't know, a6 might be useful in some cases, to get a tempo on the bishop sometimes for b5, bishop e7. But anyway, so we have a very strange game already with f6, a novel new path out of live book, seriously out of live book at move 5. So bishop d2 was played. Maybe against bishop f4, maybe there's some use for g5 at some point. Okay, so the bishop's out of any tempo gaining trouble. D takes c4, e3, and you might think, well, hold on a sec, can black try and hold on to the pawn here with that a6? Is that a fantastic use of a6? Let's have a quick look at that. If black tries to hold on to the pawn here to justify the a6 move, a4, bishop b7. Let's follow this. Taking b3. I think still it looks like a bad opening for black. Still, it's like black's being a little bit materialistic here. But maybe maybe c5, and there's some pressure. Maybe it's not all bad, but. Yeah, it looks as though white should be doing well just with this pawn configuration here. It seems quite weakened. So anyway, knight c6 was played, and we have bishop takes c4. So this e6 pawn stands out as a clear weakness. Bishop d6, e4. Now both sides castle. And why not? Just probing the weakness immediately, queen b3. There's a tactical trick employed by Magnus now. He can't really defend the pawn in any case. Adequately. He plays king h8, and if black's given another move, then e5, safeguarding the pawn. White goes in with this little trick. Bishop takes e6. The little trick is here revealed. Can you see what Magnus does in this position? If I give you 5 seconds, starting from now. Black to play. Okay, the trick, to keep material at least, is bishop takes h2. Now if knight takes, then knight takes d4, and black's actually better. He's going to be taking on e6 with this fork. He'll be taking on e6. And yeah, knight c2 for example, yes. Or yeah, it's not pretty nice. Queen c3, there's knight e2 check, winning the queen. So yeah, no, white doesn't want to take with the knight. He takes with the king and lets black get the pawn back after the check. But this is okay for white. This is slightly better for white, this position. And you might wonder why. Well, white's centre is quite good. The dark square bishop is quite dangerous. It hasn't got a counterpart in black's position. So positionally, the central control in this, and also that c file, is quite dangerous in this position for white. So d5, and here we see white expanding in the center is now threatening to win with d takes e6, that piece. And where can the knight move? It can't kick the queen. So we see the bishop maintaining the pin on the pawn, but white can now force the queens off and try and use this trump card, this c-file pressure. It's actually really looking a little bit unpleasant for black. So Magnus takes, knight takes, and white's enjoying a nice position, quite risk-free, with the bishop blunted as well by this pawn center. And white's got the facility to sort of put pressure on c7. The knight is also going to quite an awkward place now, knight a7. If it did go to e5, this looks unfortunate after taking. Bishop b4 is an unfortunate pin. And say something like this, white is looking really quite nice here. He's looking forward to torturing black on the c-file. Yes, it seems a very pleasant position where this bishop's blunted and this bishop's quite active, and white's rooks are enjoying that c-file. So yeah, Magnus played this awkward looking knight a7. We see this bishop b4, a nuisance move, and the rooks, yeah, looking much better for white here. So white enjoys a pleasant advantage out of the opening. Knight d4 looks like a very nice central knight as well. f5, at least trying to chip away at white's centre, but it weakens this diagonal a bit. This diagonal here, well, to white's king, to black's king rather, is more significant. The black king is the target at the end of this diagonal. f3. But yeah, if black didn't do anything, if black didn't play f5, what is white going to do? Say black plays b6. Knight c4. Then it just looks very pleasant. Let's give a token move. It looks very pleasant for white. This sort of position with the central control. And the knights can maybe come to f5 later. So anyway, black tries to chip away at the center with f5. It's reinforced. F takes, and it looks as though black's gained something, this e5 square. So the knight g6 is looking at this e5 square and looking at that pawn. But an ingenious idea now from white. Simple would be just to protect the pawn, right? He didn't play that. Jon Ludvig Hammer didn't play that to protect the pawn. It might be technically one of the better moves. For example, the snag with it looks as though, hang on, this is a bit silly in light of knight f4, right? Well, actually, technically, this can also like backfire on this diagonal. Knight f5, and look at this diagonal. So say knight d3, bishop c3, threatening mate. And white could end up better here, even if, yeah, he's not losing the exchange, in fact. And he's maintaining a nice position here. For example, like this, white's maintained a nice position. Superior position. A small, well, no, more than a small advantage. But anyway, another move, yeah, knight f5, kind of the same sort of implications on this diagonal, actually, losing the center pawn. I know it's very dynamic chess, but putting pressure immediately for this mate in one threat, making use of this great bishop. But it's 2 pawns here. It's actually so the mate in 1 threat is actually parried though with bishop takes d5, but it gives the king an escape square. So it's not mating, but after check here, king g8, there's a very, very powerful move which apparently Magnus Carlsen missed, and that might be a sign, that's why he's not totally in top form. If white plays a routine move here, like bishop c3, then in fact black might be doing quite well. In fact, the tables might be sort of turned potentially on white here after h5. Maybe this diagonal is going to be dangerous later. This bishop is going to be dangerous against white's king. The bishop could stick around on that diagonal, and technically black's doing quite well here. And maybe things like rook e2 later, and it's looking all right actually for black. So bishop c3 is not adequate. The move played gives white a significant advantage here. Not bishop c3, not bishop f6. Bishop f6 doesn't do anything either. Just knight c6, that should be okay for black. The move played was actually bishop d4, and it's actually threatening, unfortunately, the knight on a7, as well as knight h6 mate threat is being threatened, because the king's cut off on all these squares off knight h6. It's actually checkmate threat, believe it or not. Just to show that checkmate, look at this. It's checkmate. You can see the king's cut off. So yeah, Magnus has to parry this mate in 1 threat, but also the a7, he's losing material. So that's pretty unfortunate. Now, before we go on from this position, where Magnus is having to give up the exchange, before we go on from this position, let's just for a moment check out this earlier thing. Was this really that sound? This knight f5 from the engine point of view. Bishop c3. There was a technical move here which might have been an improvement. I'll just point that out. Instead of bishop takes d5, the move h6 parries the mate in 1 threat. Maybe a little bit better. Apparently, bishop takes. The king can go here, and this would have been an upgrade on the game. Bishop d4 is not threatening mate, and the game could have continued maybe like this. It looks pretty unpleasant visually for black still, but apparently, c5, this position is equal almost, apparently. Yeah, that's what the engine is indicating. So yeah, there seems to be a way, with h6 here, of not going into this continuation of losing the exchange. So bishop takes d5 basically loses the exchange, unfortunately. So not a great tournament for Magnus, not a great position. Is he going downhill from here? So he gives up the exchange. It's for 2 pawns, so you might think there's some optimism to be gained. It's 2 pawns for the exchange, which often is quite good. What's the problem here? Well, the bishop, unfortunately, is immediately trapped. It has to be rescued or something. So, something like this. So rook d8, counter-attacking, trying to get the bishop out. But now knight e6. Okay, hitting the rook. And this is a bit tense. What's going on here? What if, black played rook d2, but what if rook e8? If rook e8, knight takes c7, gaining another tempo, and then protecting the pawn, this should be quite good for white. So the rook actually came just to d2 here, hoping for bishop takes b3 to get the bishop out. Now, in this position, rook c3 was played. It seems tempting to take on c7. Why not just take on c7? Why was rook c3 played? Let's have a quick look here. Rook takes c7. This is okay as well, actually. There's nothing majorly bad for white here. In fact, white could get significant advantage like this. It is the exchange up after all. It shouldn't be a major surprise that white is the exchange up here, and black's like losing a bit of time trying to get his bishop out at the moment. But anyway, rook c3 might actually be stronger than taking on c7 a little bit. because actually there's not just protecting the pawn, there's this idea of rook c f3 and rook f8 mating, believe it or not, because the knight's controlling g7. So while holding the bishop stuck there on a2, white is also threatening this vicious move here, rook c f3. Just to demonstrate that clearly, well, black played rook e2. If you know, rook c f3 was allowed, say like this. This is unpleasant. Black might have to use that h6 resource, but here, yeah, this is looking nasty. Rook g7. Yeah, I'll be picking up more advantage now. Knight c4. It looks pretty dangerous. Yeah, it looks pretty dangerous for black. So Magnus tried to evict this knight on e6, so he can just take on e6 if rook f3. The knight moves, and yes, black's in a very difficult position. If he takes on f4, rook takes f4, and white's threatening rook g3 check and rook f8 mating. So that's causing black to try and defend there, but then this is very good for white, this position here, switching to the queen side, winning material over here is unpleasant. So yeah, taking is not great. Rook b2, trying to sort of still rescue the bishop, break it out of prison here, but knight takes g6, and now white plays rook takes c7. And all of a sudden, black's king safety is brought into focus here. White is threatening things like rook f6, maybe to take here, among other things. Or rook d1 to try and mate with the two rooks. Rook takes b3 was played, hitting the knight. This is accelerating to the end, actually. This is a very, very difficult position. Black's best might be knight c6, apparently. Knight c6. After rook e1. King f8, rook a1. This position here is tricky. There's a pin, and things are not looking too great for black. The exchange down here, his pawn's splintered, but there's more of a game here than the game continuation. Black can fight on a little bit. It's awkward with this pin, but yeah, black could fight on in this line with knight c6. But yeah, Magnus maybe wants to end this tournament quickly. He played rook takes b3. Maybe he wants to go home by this stage. Now white just plays rook d1, threatening mate. Knight c6. This isn't, sorry, rook d1 threatening mate. Knight c6 parrying that mate threat. But now rook d7 creates another mate threat. Rook c8 mate. Yes, two rooks on the 7th. By the way, that expression on the 7th rank means relative to the rook's initial position. You know, it doesn't literally mean, because black could have played a rook to the 7th, it would mean on the 2nd rank technically on coordinates. Rook on the 7th is a standard expression for my system, Nimzowitsch my system. So we've got both rooks on the 7th. And they're pretty destructive here with rook c8 mate being threatened, mating in 2 after knight d8 taking. So here Magnus resigned. Yeah, there's not much to do here after this rook d7. Let's try and give black, what does black do here? Let's try and give black a move. We can't really. It's pretty hopeless. All the engine moves are just giving up material just to delay things. Yeah, so it's pretty helpless against rook c8. I know it's accelerating to the end. It was basically accelerating to the end instead of knight c6. In this position, rook takes b3 was just the last fatal, blunder. Knight c6 would have put up a bit more resistance apparently, but white's significantly better here. It's looking pretty nasty for black. So yeah, that speeds things up. This position speeds things up. Yes, what a tournament. Magnus achieving a negative score, losing about more than 20 rating points, and putting Topalov and Anand reshuffling. If you go to 2700 Chess website, reshuffling the top ranked players, they're about 50 points away from Magnus, and Topolov around the same rating at 2 and 3, which is good for the 40-year-olds. It shows that chess isn't like tennis, that after a certain age, like 30, you can't play like professional tennis at the highest levels. But in chess, if you're over 30, it shows that there's still hope. Keep the brain ticking, good exercise. And if you look at the world top 10 on the world live rating list, that 2700 chess website, you got players over 40 doing really, really well. So that's good for people like me. That's encouraging, at least. I know Magnus is pretty sounding pretty depressed on Facebook. He posted a funny message which I saw on Reddit about hoping people won't stop believing he can still play. Of course Magnus can still play, of course he's the best. It just happens, doesn't it? He's just human. If he was like this major computer chess program, he'd be entirely repeatable. Every performance would be much more consistent, but he's human. He's got emotions. That freak incident in round 1, losing on time, probably did have some impact. Whatever people say, because he's not a computer chess program. We're not. So it just shows he's brought himself actually closer to reveal mortality like the rest of us, even the world chess champion. I think the most feared world chess champion who really didn't seem to get affected by things, was really strongly bouncing back after any loss, was Kasparov, of course. Like the reign of terror of Kasparov. But yeah, Magnus is showing in this particular tournament he's some human stuff is going on, perhaps. Okay, anyway. But this is this Grand Prix concept. So the London Chess Classic kind of merged with Sinkfield Cup, etc., to do something independent of FIDE, and it's very, very exciting going around the world with these top players. It's a very, very exciting format. So another boost, to chess, basically. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.